I'll give you $5 for it. That was the first thing out of her mouth. No hello, no smile, no hint of irony. Just those 6 words dripping with entitlement. Valentina Baker, 28 years old, unemployed and proud daughter of Leah Baker, our charmingly tyrannical HOA president. I was standing in my driveway, unboxing my brand new iPhone 17 sunlight glinting off the polished titanium when she made her ridiculous offer. I thought she was joking. I even laughed. But Valentina didn't. Her eyes narrowed, and before I could react, she snatched the phone from my hand and slammed it onto the concrete. The sound was like a gunshot. My brand new phone shattered into glittering dust. From her porch, Leah shouted, "Jonathan, don't be dramatic, it's just a phone." I stared at them both, mother and daughter, standing proud in their delusion, and said quietly, "You two just made a very expensive mistake." They smirked, thinking I wouldn't do anything. They were wrong. Before I tell you how this spiraled into the wildest HOA scandal our town's ever seen, comment where you're watching from and what time it is, and make sure you subscribe. You'll want to see the ending. The morning after the iPhone incident, I woke up still half convinced I'd dreamed it. No sane person would actually destroy someone else's $2,000 phone over a $5 joke, right? But when I walked out to my driveway there, it was the glittering mosaic of glass still scattered across the concrete, like evidence from a crime scene. I crouched down, picked up the biggest piece, and saw my reflection fractured across the screen. It felt symbolic somehow. That little moment, one entitled tantrum, was about to break a lot more than tempered glass. It was about to crack open every layer of rot underneath this perfect HOA-polished neighborhood facade. My name's Jonathan Collins, 45 years old tech consultant. I work from home, fixing problems for clients around the country who actually pay me to think logically. That's something in short supply here in Maplewood Meadows, a place where logic takes a back seat to lawn, height, mailbox color, and community harmony. And the self-proclaimed guardian of that harmony, Leah Baker. Leah had been HOA president for nearly 5 years, an eternity in HOA time. She ran the place like a suburban monarchy. Her rules were endless garbage cans must be hidden by 6:05 a.m. Sharp house paint colors had to be earth tone neutral, and don't even think about leaving Christmas lights up past January 2nd. She smiled in every HOA newsletter photo, but behind that polite grin was someone who truly enjoyed control. I'd kept my distance from her for 2 years. She lived 3 houses down with her daughter Valentina, who'd recently moved back home after taking a break from her influencer career. Translation: unemployed and apparently allergic to real work. Valentina was always outside filming TikToks and designer knockoffs, staging fake luxury photo shoots in front of other people's cars. I'd caught her posing next to my truck once. I didn't say anything, then I just made a mental note to move my cameras higher. Truth is, I'd seen it coming. Leah's little kingdom had cracks forming long before my iPhone hit the pavement. The first time we ever argued was over my mailbox. It was too modern, she said, didn't match the neighborhood aesthetic. I told her I liked it because it didn't rust. She fined me $50 anyway. I paid the fine, smiled, and installed a hidden camera facing her yard that same week. Then came the lawn incident. She claimed my grass was half an inch over regulation length. Half an inch. I told her my mower was set to HOA-approved height. She didn't care. She left another citation taped to my front door with a passive-aggressive note. "We all must do our part for property values." Property values. The sacred scripture of every HOA tyrant. When Valentina moved back in 6 months ago, things got louder literally. Late-night parties bass thumping at 2 a.m. Perfume clouds so strong they probably registered on radar. Every complaint I filed went mysteriously missing before reaching the HOA record. I didn't have proof yet, but I knew exactly who was deleting them. So I started documenting everything. Every noise, every confrontation, every petty infraction. My house was wired with 4 outdoor cameras, 2 inside, and a backup hard drive synced to the cloud. That habit of mine to always have evidence was about to save me a lot of trouble. The day before my iPhone shattered, Leah had already been circling like a hawk. I caught her standing on the sidewalk staring at my driveway with her arms folded. When I asked if she needed something, she said, "Just making sure everyone's property complies with the new HOA guidelines." Then she eyed my phone in my hand, smiled, and walked off. I didn't think much of it until her daughter showed up the next morning. Valentina strutted across the street wearing sunglasses bigger than her face and a pink tracksuit that screamed expensive but looked suspiciously fake. She glanced at the iPhone box sitting on my patio table like it was treasure. "Wow, is that the new one? You must be rich or something?" I laughed politely. "No, just saved up for it. Took a few months." That's when she dropped the line that started everything. "I'll give you $5 for it." At first I thought she was kidding. I even offered a smile. But when I saw her expression flat serious, almost offended, that I didn't agree, I realized she wasn't joking. She started ranting about economic fairness, about how billionaires hoard technology and how neighbors should share. It was the kind of speech you expect from a live stream, not your own front yard. When I refused, she stomped her foot like a child. Leah appeared from nowhere as if she'd been listening the whole time. "Jonathan," she said, "it's just a phone. You could make her day." "I could," I said, "but I'm not going to." That's when Valentina's face twisted into something feral. She lunged forward, grabbed the phone from my hand, and before I could even process it, she hurled it to the ground. The sound was sharp, final. My heart sank. Leah gasped, not in horror, but in annoyance. "Jonathan, you see what you made her do, made her do." That line echoed in my head as I stared down at the shattered glass. I didn't shout. I didn't curse. I just bent down, picked up the broken pieces, and said quietly, "You just made the biggest mistake of your lives." Then I walked inside. They stood there stunned, maybe even a little proud of themselves. Leah called after me, "We'll talk about compensation later, Jonathan." Her tone was dripping with arrogance, like she already knew she'd find a way to twist this around. But what Leah didn't know was that I had 4 angles of crystal-clear video footage, including one with her reflection smirking from her window. That night, as I sat at my desk reviewing the footage, I started seeing patterns, little moments I'd overlooked before. Valentina wandering into my yard accidentally. Leah photographing my garden for HOA records. A missing package I'd dismissed as porch theft. It all started to look connected. For 2 years, I'd been living next to a pair of self-appointed royalty who thought the world existed to serve them. They fined, they threatened, they bullied, but they'd never faced real consequences. Until now. The more I watched the footage, the calmer I felt. Because anger burns fast, but planning lasts. I made myself a cup of coffee, sat back and whispered, "All right, Leah, let's play by your rules." The next morning I drafted 3 emails, one to the police, one to my lawyer friend Sarah Chen, and one to the Maplewood HOA board. Each one contained a neatly trimmed clip of Valentina destroying my phone, time-stamped, documented, unambiguous. As I hit send, I glanced out the window. Leah was trimming her roses, pretending not to notice me. Valentina sat on the porch, scrolling through her cracked phone, muttering to herself. They looked so sure of themselves, so safe inside their little bubble of influence. I smiled because I already knew by the time this was over they'd wish they'd never met me. And all it took to start the chain reaction was one stupid offer, $5 for an iPhone. The next morning I woke up to the hum of the sprinklers and the sound of birds fighting over breadcrumbs in the driveway. For a moment, life in Maplewood Meadows felt peaceful again. Then I saw it. The shattered remains of my iPhone 17, still lying on the pavement where Valentina Baker had left it. Tiny pieces of glass glittered in the sunlight like diamonds mocking me. I stood there for a full minute, letting the absurdity of it all sink in. My brand new phone, barely 4 hours old, was now a $2,000 paperweight, thanks to an entitled 20-something who thought $5 was a fair offer. I didn't call the police right away. I wanted to be methodical, not emotional. My coffee was still brewing when I sat down at my desk and opened the security feed. I had 4 angles, one from the porch, one from the driveway, one from the doorbell cam, and another from the side of the house. Each one captured Valentina's face in high definition, her manicured hand grabbing the phone, her arms swinging downward with theatrical rage. The crunch of glass was almost satisfying to watch now because this time I had them. I downloaded the clips, added timestamps, and backed everything up on 3 drives. Years of working in cybersecurity had taught me that evidence disappears fast when the Bakers get involved. By 9 a.m., I received a friendly text from Leah Baker herself. "Leah, good morning, Jonathan. I heard there was a little misunderstanding yesterday. Let's not escalate things. It's bad for community spirit." Community spirit. That was her favorite phrase right after property values, and as HOA president, I must insist. I didn't reply. Instead, I texted Sarah Chen, my lawyer friend who handled everything from privacy disputes to HOA appeals. She called me within minutes. "Tell me everything," she said. I did. There was a pause on the other end. Then she sighed. "You've got them dead to rights, Jonathan. File a police report, keep copies of everything, and don't confront them again directly. Let the system choke on their arrogance." I couldn't help but smirk. That's the plan. But before I could even finish my coffee, my doorbell rang. I checked the camera, and there they were. Leah and Valentina, standing side by side, like a budget version of mother-daughter royalty. Leah was dressed in her trademark pastel blazer, holding a clipboard as if she'd come for an inspection. Valentina wore oversized sunglasses, chewing gum like it was a statement of power. I opened the door slowly, keeping my phone on record. Jonathan, Leah began with a syrupy tone that instantly made my teeth hurt. We came by to clear up this misunderstanding. Misunderstanding, I asked. You mean the part where your daughter smashed my phone? Valentina scoffed. You're being dramatic. It was an accident. An accident, I repeated, glancing at the security camera above us. So she accidentally grabbed it from my hand and accidentally threw it on the ground. Leah's eyes flickered up toward the camera. Her smile faltered for half a second before snapping back in place. Jonathan, let's be reasonable. These things happen. She was upset. Maybe you said something that triggered her. I said, no, I interrupted. That's what triggered her. Valentina crossed her arms. You don't have to be rude about it. I was just trying to make a deal. $5 is better than nothing. I looked at her and couldn't help but laugh, not because it was funny, but because it was so absurd it bordered on performance art. Valentina, I said, do you even hear yourself? Don't talk to my daughter like that, Leah snapped. You men always think you can intimidate women when you're wrong. That's when I knew exactly what game she was playing, the HOA queen card, the guilt card, and the gender card all at once. I'd seen it before. I'd beaten it before. Tell you what I said calmly. I'll let the police decide who's wrong. The smile vanished from Leah's face. You wouldn't dare. I held up the cracked iPhone, still dusted with bits of glass. I already did. They froze for a moment like two actors waiting for the director to yell cut. Then, Leah's voice dropped an octave. You'll regret this. She turned on her heel and stormed off Valentina, following with a dramatic eye roll. As soon as they were gone, I forwarded the footage to the local police department's property crimes division, with a clear statement, intentional destruction of personal property. Then I attached Leah's text message about community spirit just for flavor. An hour later, an officer called to confirm receipt. We'll swing by their address for a statement. Thanks for the clear evidence, Mr. Collins. I spent the rest of the morning cleaning the glass, replaying their faces in my head, the entitlement, the lack of remorse, the pure belief that rules never applied to them. Around noon, I saw a familiar white SUV, Leah's, parked across the street. She was talking to someone in her driveway, pointing at my house like a general giving orders. A few neighbors peeked from their blinds. Leah noticed and smiled sweetly, waving as if she were discussing garden plans, not plotting HOA warfare. By evening, the retaliation had already begun. At 6:30 p.m., I received an email from the HOA board, notice of property violation, unauthorized security devices. Apparently, my doorbell camera did not meet aesthetic standards. Attached were two blurry photos clearly taken from Leah's front yard. I laughed out loud. The Bakers had gone from destruction to bureaucratic revenge in less than 12 hours. I wrote back immediately, Dear HOA Board, thank you for your concern. All of my security devices were approved under Section 5B of the Community Safety Guidelines signed by President Leah Baker herself, dated March 3rd. Please see attached copy, Jonathan Collins. Then I hit send to all. 5 minutes later, my inbox lit up with replies from other homeowners, some congratulating me, some whispering stories about Leah's previous harassment campaigns. One neighbor mentioned that Valentina had keyed his car a year ago. Another said she demanded influencer access to his pool for a photo shoot. Apparently, I wasn't their first target, just the first one to fight back. That night, I sat on my porch with a cup of coffee, watching the streetlights flicker on. Across the way, Leah's blinds were cracked open and I could see her pacing. Valentina was on her phone, probably ranting on social media. I could imagine the post, my neighbor freaked out over a phone. So toxic. Let her rant. Let her dig her own grave. Because the next morning, she'd be getting a visit from the police, the HOA vice president, and my attorney friend Sarah, all carrying copies of the same video. For years, Leah Baker had ruled this neighborhood through intimidation paperwork and polished smiles. But this time, she'd made one fatal mistake. She let her daughter act out on camera. And that one act, one stupid, impulsive tantrum, was about to bring her entire empire down. I looked at the shattered remains of my phone one last time before tossing them in a plastic bag labeled Evidence A. Sometimes karma doesn't need time. Sometimes it just needs Wi-Fi and 4 Kelvin's footage. The morning after the police visit, the entire neighborhood buzzed like a beehive. You could feel the tension in the air humming under the sound of leaf blowers and sprinklers. Word spreads fast in Maplewood Meadows, especially when the queen bee herself, Leah Baker, is involved. From my office window, I could see her pacing in her driveway, clutching her phone, gesturing wildly as she spoke to someone. I guessed she was calling the HOA board, maybe even the police chief. That's how she operated: pressure, persuasion, and intimidation wrapped in pastel blazers and fake civility. Meanwhile, I brewed a fresh cup of coffee and got to work. The Bakers weren't my first taste of HOA absurdity, but they were the first to make it personal. And if they wanted a war of paperwork and optics, they'd picked the wrong opponent. I spent the next hour organizing my evidence. Every video clip, every screenshot, every message Leah had ever sent me, all neatly labeled, time-stamped, and backed up on multiple drives. Years of tech work had trained me for exactly this kind of slow, methodical destruction. Then I decided to dig deeper. I opened my laptop and searched Valentina Baker Maplewood. The results were enlightening. There were traces of her old social media accounts: Instagram, TikTok, a YouTube channel called Valentina Vibes. Most of the content was exaggerated lifestyle nonsense, luxury cars she didn't own, designer bags she'd borrowed, and cringe-worthy motivational quotes like "manifest it, babe." But the comments told another story. Under one video, someone had written, "Didn't you get kicked out of your last neighborhood for vandalism?" Another reply said, "She smashed my roommate's car window and lied about it." I clicked deeper, tracing her digital breadcrumbs. Apparently, Valentina had lived in 3 different neighborhoods over the past 5 years, each time leaving behind chaos, unpaid rent, and unresolved misunderstandings. The latest thread mentioned a small claims case in a nearby county. I downloaded the public record. Sure enough, there it was: Valentina Baker versus one Jonathan Hayes, 2022 charge property damage settled privately. Pattern of behavior, I muttered. Beautiful. I took a screenshot and added it to the file. Around noon, my phone buzzed with an email from the Maplewood Police Department. It was brief but satisfying. Subject: follow-up on incident #4527. We have reviewed the footage and statements provided. Miss Valentina Baker has been issued a formal notice to appear for property damage questioning. You will be contacted once a court date is set. Leah must have read the same message, because 5 minutes later she was pounding on my front door. "Jonathan, we need to talk." I opened it halfway. "Leah, you're trespassing. Don't you dare pull that tone with me," she hissed, the HOA president mask slipping off her face. "You've humiliated my daughter. She's having panic attacks." "You're ruining her mental health, Leah," I said, calm as ever. "Your daughter ruined my phone. You both broke HOA rules, police laws, and basic human decency." "I'm not ruining anything. I'm just letting the truth do its job." She jabbed her manicured finger at my chest. "If you keep this up, I'll make sure the HOA fines you into the ground." I tilted my head, slightly suppressing a smirk. "Good luck with that. You might want to focus on your own violations first." She froze. "What are you talking about?" "Oh, you'll see." I smiled and closed the door slowly, leaving her fuming on the porch. What Leah didn't know was that I'd already started gathering her skeletons too. That night I met with Sarah Chen at a small diner downtown. I slid the flash drive across the table. "Everything you need," I said. She plugged it into her laptop and skimmed the files, her eyebrows arching higher with each document. "You're telling me this woman's been filing HOA reimbursements for maintenance projects that never happened?" "Yup. Landscaping, security upgrades, office renovations, none of which exist." Sarah whistled softly. "Jonathan, this isn't just petty HOA nonsense. This is embezzlement." I nodded. "And I've got proof that she's been claiming disability benefits while working under the table as a consultant for other HOAs. She's collecting money from both ends." Sarah sat back impressed. "So what's your plan?" "Expose her publicly," I said. "Legally, quietly, but so thoroughly that no one ever forgets." Sarah grinned. "You're dangerous when you're calm." We drafted 2 documents that night. The first was a formal police statement update, including the new evidence of Valentina's past vandalism. The second was a civil claim against both Leah and Valentina for property damage, harassment, and emotional distress. By the time I got home, I felt lighter. Not happy exactly, but focused. Then came the real twist. The next morning, I woke up to find my driveway sprayed with pink glitter paint. Big looping letters spelled out "Phone Drama King." It was childish, but the message was clear: they were escalating. My first instinct was anger. My second was amusement. I checked my cameras. Sure enough, at 2:17 a.m., Valentina stumbled across my driveway with a can of paint, giggling, while Leah watched from the sidewalk. I couldn't believe it. They'd vandalized my property again, this time on video from multiple angles. By 9 a.m., the police were back. Officer Morales, the same one from the first report, stood shaking his head. "Mr. Collins, I think they're trying to make your life miserable." I smiled faintly. "They're doing the opposite. They're making my case stronger." He chuckled. "You want to press charges for this too?" "Oh, absolutely." While Morales took photos, I sent another email to the HOA board, this time attaching all the footage. I titled it Pattern of Misconduct by President Leah Baker and Her Household. Within hours, replies flooded in. Apparently, I wasn't the only one Leah had harassed or fined unfairly. One neighbor sent me photos of Leah's car parked illegally on HOA property during her inspection rounds. Another forwarded a thread where Leah had been caught using HOA funds to cater her daughter's birthday party. I compiled everything into one document labeled the Baker File. By afternoon, Sarah had reviewed the case and submitted it to both the HOA's Oversight Committee and the County Fraud Department. Leah must have caught wind of it, because that evening I found an anonymous note in my mailbox. "You think you're clever, but you're playing with fire. Back off, Jonathan." It wasn't signed, but the handwriting was unmistakable. Flowery loops, expensive pen, pure Leah. I held the letter up to my porch light, smiled, and tucked it into my growing folder of evidence. That night, as the street fell quiet, I stood at my window watching the Baker's house. The lights were still on silhouettes, moving back and forth, panic, not power. For years, they'd ruled this neighborhood through fear and fake smiles. Now their little empire was cracking, and the sound of it breaking was the sweetest music I'd ever heard. I took a long sip of coffee and whispered to myself, "You wanted to play HOA games, Leah. Let's see how you handle HOA justice." Because I wasn't just fighting back anymore. I was building a case, one that would burn bright enough to expose every dirty trick they'd ever pulled. And when it was over, I wouldn't need revenge. The truth would handle that for me. The following Monday, my neighborhood looked perfectly calm, lawns trimmed, mailboxes, upright sprinklers humming in rhythm, but I knew better. Underneath that postcard surface, the Bakers were scrambling. My inbox was full of HOA announcements, suddenly clarifying rules, all signed by Leah Baker. It was her way of pretending everything was normal while she tried to cover her tracks. I wasn't in the mood for pretending. That morning, I printed every photo, every clip, every receipt, and neatly organized them in a binder thicker than the HOA rulebook itself. Then I headed straight to the Maplewood Police Department to finalize my statement. Officer Morales met me in the lobby, coffee in one hand, clipboard in the other. "Morning, Mr. Collins. I saw your video. That's about as clear as it gets." "I wish all my tech clients had this much documentation," I said dryly. He smiled. "We'll move this forward. They'll each get a summons to appear. You should file for restitution in civil court too. Already working on it." By noon, I'd done exactly that. Small claims court filing case number 61,392B. Claim property destruction and harassment. The fee was small, but the statement was loud. Leah and Valentina were officially defendants. I could almost hear Leah's scream echo through the cul-de-sac when she received the papers. At 2:15 p.m., my phone buzzed with an incoming call. Jonathan Collins speaking. "This is Leah Baker," she snapped. "What the hell do you think you're doing? You're dragging my family through the mud over a toy phone. $2,000 isn't a toy," I replied. "And if you'd taught your daughter boundaries, we wouldn't be here." "You arrogant little." She stopped herself, took a sharp breath, and switched to her fake sweet tone. "Jonathan, listen. I can make this all go away. Withdraw the case, and I'll have the HOA reimburse. You partially say $800. I laughed. "Leah, you can't even reimburse yourself legally without a vote. You really should read your own bylaws." Click. She hung up. An hour later, the retaliation began again, digital this time. On Nextdoor, the neighborhood forum, a brand new post appeared titled, "Beware of Aggressive Male Neighbor." The author, anonymous, but the phrasing was pure Leah. "He records women without consent. Be cautious. Letting your children near his property." Classic smear tactic. I didn't take the bait. Instead, I uploaded my own post, calm, factual, and complete with screenshots. To my neighbors, recent false claims are circulating about me. For transparency, here is the full, unedited video of last week's incident involving my property. Please note that the footage is from security cameras approved by the HOA under Section 5B. Viewer discretion contains destruction of property. Within minutes, the thread exploded. Comments flooded in. "Wait, that's Leah's daughter, so she smashed the phone. Unbelievable." By sunset, half the neighborhood had seen the video. By nightfall, the other half was texting me stories. Turns out, Valentina had quite a reputation. One woman, Nancy from Lot 12, said Valentina once borrowed her patio furniture for a photo shoot and returned it covered in spray tan stains. Another neighbor sent me pictures of Valentina parked across his lawn during a content day. The pieces fit together. This wasn't an isolated tantrum. It was a pattern of entitlement that stretched across the entire block. And now everyone had seen it for themselves. Meanwhile, Leah doubled down. The next morning, I received 3 new HOA violation notices. One for unsightly fence color, one for improperly stored trash bin, and one for hostile online behavior. The timestamps were almost funny. They'd been written 10 minutes apart. That's when I decided to stop defending and start teaching. I drafted a formal complaint to the HOA's oversight committee, attaching proof of Leah's misuse of authority, her conflict of interest in issuing citations against an active litigant, and her fraudulent reimbursements. Sarah Chen helped me refine the wording sharp enough to cut marble but polite enough to pass legal review. When we hit send, Sarah leaned back in her chair. "You just dropped a bomb on the HOA." I smiled. "Good, I like fireworks." 2 days later, the ripples started. First, I got a call from Tom Richards, the HOA vice president, a mild-mannered accountant who'd never once challenged Leah in public. "Jonathan," he whispered, "I just reviewed your complaint. I had no idea she'd been filing reimbursements like that. There's no record of board approval." "Then you might want to check the landscaping invoices from last year," I said. "They were billed to a company called Baker Family Consulting." He went silent for a long moment. "That's her. Exactly." By the end of that day, Leah's perfect little reputation had begun to crack. A quiet internal audit was launched. The board didn't announce it publicly, at least not yet, but in Maplewood nothing stays secret for long. I noticed the difference almost immediately. When Leah drove past in her white SUV, the usual neighborly waves were gone. Curtains twitched, conversations hushed. The woman who once ruled the block with a clipboard was now being avoided like a walking subpoena. Valentina, meanwhile, tried to reclaim her influencer status online. She posted a teary video titled "My Neighbor is Bullying Me." It backfired spectacularly. Someone in the comments linked my security footage, and her own followers turned on her. The video racked up thousands of views, not sympathy but ridicule. Memes appeared overnight. One read $5 and a felony. She deleted her account within 24 hours. Still, I wasn't done. The final piece of my counterattack was subtle but devastating. While cross-referencing Leah's reimbursement forms, Sarah noticed something odd. Leah listed her income as limited due to disability on public filings, yet she'd been caught on camera lifting heavy boxes, gardening, even painting fences during HOA events. In one of her own newsletters, she bragged about personally installing solar lights around the clubhouse. Fraud, plain and simple. Sarah sent the documentation to the county benefits office for review. We didn't need to push. We just had to let the system work. And work it did. By the following week, an investigator contacted me for confirmation of the timestamps. The next day, 2 unmarked cars stopped by Leah's house for an interview. I didn't gloat, at least not openly, but I may have enjoyed trimming my lawn a little louder than usual while they were there. That evening, the street was silent. No barking orders from Leah, no screeching laughter from Valentina. Just the sound of sprinklers and justice quietly taking root. But even as I enjoyed the calm, I knew this wasn't over. People like Leah don't surrender, they flail. They make threats, they cry victim, they pull everyone down with them. I could already feel the next storm forming. Sure enough, at 8:47 p.m., my phone pinged with a message from an unknown number. "Unknown, you think you've won, you have no idea who you're dealing with." I smirked, saved the message, and forwarded it straight to Officer Morales. Then I turned off my phone, leaned back in my chair, and looked around my quiet, well-lit home. Every camera light blinked reassuringly. Every file was backed up. Every lie Leah had ever told was one step closer to exposure. I poured myself a drink, raised it toward the window, and said softly, "To the Bakers, thank you for teaching me how to fight properly." Because the truth was, I wasn't angry anymore. I was enjoying it. Leah and Valentina had turned my quiet neighborhood into a battlefield. But what they didn't realize was that I'd already won before the first shot was fired, because while they shouted and schemed, I documented, filed, and waited. And in Maplewood Meadows, where image is everything, evidence is the one thing they could never control. The morning of the hearing felt like a movie set: crisp blue skies, a courthouse glowing in sunlight, and an audience of curious neighbors pretending they just happened to be downtown. Word had spread fast. Jonathan Collins versus Leah and Valentina Baker was officially on the county docket. I parked my truck beside a news van from the local station, Channel 8 Action News. Great, I thought. This circus had everything now except popcorn. Inside, the air smelled like old carpet and paperwork. I found my lawyer, Sarah Chen, already waiting by the courtroom doors. Calm, focused, and holding a leather binder thick enough to double as a weapon. "You ready?" she asked. "I've been ready since she said $5, I replied. Sarah smiled. "Then let's get your refund." We walked in together. At the front sat Judge Harris, a man in his 60s with silver hair and an expression that said he'd seen every petty dispute known to mankind. But even he raised an eyebrow when he glanced at the case title, Collins v. Baker. Leah and Valentina entered a few minutes later. Leah wore a beige power suit and a pearl necklace that screamed respectability theater. Valentina clomped in wearing dark sunglasses, a white hoodie, and the emotional energy of a spoiled reality TV contestant. They sat down whispering furiously to each other. When the judge called the case, Sarah stood smoothly. Your Honor, we are here today because the defendants intentionally destroyed my client's personal property, engaged in harassment, and subsequently attempted to retaliate through fraudulent HOA violations. Leah rolled her eyes. Your Honor, this is absurd. It was an accident, Mrs. Baker, the judge interrupted. You'll have your turn. Continue, Miss Chen. Sarah opened the binder and began laying out the timeline, the day of the incident, the footage angles, the follow-up texts, the HOA emails, every detail time-stamped and printed. She handed copies to the judge and the defense table. Then she clicked a remote. The courtroom screen came alive with doorbell footage crystal clear, high resolution, undeniable. Valentina appeared on screen, reaching for the iPhone, shouting and smashing it against the pavement. The crunch echoed through the speakers. You could almost feel the silence tighten in the room. Judge Harris blinked twice. That's fairly straightforward. Sarah continued. We also have video evidence from 2 other cameras, confirming deliberate destruction and corroborating statements from Officer Morales, who responded to the scene. Leah tried to laugh it off. Your Honor, surely you can see my daughter was provoked. Mr. Collins was taunting her, provoked, I asked. She offered me $5 for a $2,000 phone, and when I said no, she committed vandalism. That's not provocation, that's insanity. A few people in the back snickered. Leah shot them a death glare. Valentina pulled off her sunglasses dramatically. You're ruining my life. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. Judge Harris looked tired already. Miss Baker, please answer questions only when addressed. Sarah went on methodically. Additionally, Your Honor, the defendants retaliated by filing multiple false HOA violations against my client within 24 hours of the police report. We have digital timestamps proving Mrs. Baker used her HOA credentials to issue these citations. That got a murmur from the gallery. Leah's mouth tightened. The judge glanced down at the paperwork. Mrs. Baker, were you serving as HOA president during this time? Yes, and did you issue these citations personally? Well, someone had to maintain order. Order, the judge interrupted his tone, turning sharp. It appears the only order you were maintaining was against your neighbor for holding you accountable. Sarah seized the moment. Furthermore, Your Honor, evidence indicates Mrs. Baker has a history of misusing HOA funds and submitting false expense claims. My client provided copies of reimbursement requests billed to her own consulting business. Leah's face drained of color. That's irrelevant. Fraud is never irrelevant, Sarah said coolly. The judge leaned back, folding his hands. Mrs. Baker, if these documents are accurate, you're not only facing civil liability, but potential referral to the county's fraud division. Do you understand? For the first time since I'd known her, Leah Baker had no words. Valentina looked panicked. Mom, what's happening? She whispered, but her microphone picked it up perfectly. The entire room heard. Sarah handed the judge a final exhibit. We also have testimony from 3 neighbors, each of whom experienced similar harassment from the Bakers. The bailiff opened the side door, and in walked 3 familiar faces: Nancy from Lot 12, Tom Richards, and Mr. Patel, the retired engineer from down the street. Each took the stand, one after another. Nancy described the patio furniture theft. Tom mentioned the forged landscaping invoices. Mr. Patel testified that Leah once tried to fine him for leaving his recycling bin out too early, even though she'd done the same thing the night before. By the time the testimonies ended, Leah was gripping her pearls so tightly they looked ready to snap. Valentina muttered something under her breath, then exploded. You're all jealous. You've been obsessed with us since we moved in. The judge slammed his gavel. Miss Baker, sit down or I'll hold you in contempt. She sat trembling, tears threatening but refusing to fall. Sarah approached for the closing argument. Your Honor, this case isn't just about a broken phone. It's about accountability in a community where power has been abused. Mr. Collins documented everything reported properly and stayed calm. In response, the defendants retaliated with lies and manipulation. This isn't neighborhood drama, it's malicious conduct. And today, it ends. The courtroom went silent. Judge Harris looked from me to Leah, then to Valentina. I've heard enough. He paused for a long, heavy moment, letting the tension hang. Then he said judgment in favor of the plaintiff, Mr. Collins. The defendants are ordered to pay full restitution for the destroyed property, plus additional damages totaling $3,000 for emotional distress and retaliatory conduct. Furthermore, I'm referring this matter to the HOA Oversight Committee and the County Fraud Division for independent investigation. The gavel came down like thunder. Valentina gasped. "You can't do this, I just did," Judge Harris replied. Leah stood face, flushed eyes burning with rage. "Jonathan, you think you've won. You have no idea who you're dealing with." I picked up my binder, turned toward her, and smiled. "I think I do, Leah. I've been documenting her for months." For a moment, nobody moved. Then the bailiff gestured toward the exit. Leah stormed out, dragging Valentina behind her, muttering threats about appeals and conspiracies. Sarah closed her binder with a satisfied thump. "Congratulations, Mr. Collins. That was brutal." "Thank you," I said, glancing at the crowd. Half the neighborhood was their neighbors who'd been bullied, fined, or humiliated by Leah Baker. They smiled at me now, a quiet solidarity in their eyes. As we stepped outside into the sunlight, reporters clustered nearby. One of them shouted, "Mr. Collins, any comment on today's verdict?" I looked directly into the camera. "Yes. Record everything, tell the truth, and never let bullies hide behind their titles." It made the 6 o'clock news. That night, I sat on my porch as dusk settled over Maplewood Meadows. For the first time in years, it was quiet. No HOA patrols, no threats, no pink SUVs blocking my driveway. Just the sound of cicadas and peace. But deep down, I knew Leah wasn't finished. People like her never admit defeat. They regroup, they plot, they scheme. I wasn't afraid. I'd beaten her once, and I could do it again. But something in her eyes, back in that courtroom, something wild and desperate, told me the next move wouldn't be about rules anymore. It would be personal. I leaned back in my chair, watching the faint glow from the baker's house across the street. One light on one shadow moving behind the curtain. "Come on then, Leah," I whispered. "Let's see what you've got left." Because in this neighborhood, the fight was never truly over. It just changed forms. And I was ready for round 2. The morning after the verdict, Maplewood Meadows felt different. The air was lighter. The tension that usually hung over the cul-de-sac like invisible smog had thinned, and for the first time in years, people waved at me as they passed by. Even the mailman smiled. It was the kind of peace you only notice after surviving a storm. But in the Baker household, the storm wasn't over. Around 10 a.m., Leah's white SUV screeched into her driveway. She jumped out, still dressed in her beige courtroom suit, phone glued to her ear, barking orders into it like a CEO of chaos. Valentina followed, wearing pajamas and sunglasses, even though it was cloudy. They didn't notice me standing across the street, trimming my hedge with the calm of a man who'd already won. For a moment, I felt almost sorry for them almost. That sympathy evaporated when I checked my email an hour later. There it was, a new HOA notice, this one, unsigned but unmistakably written by Leah. The accusation: unauthorized use of community resources for personal gain. According to her, I'd somehow profited from the trial publicity and damaged the neighborhood's image. It was laughable. The woman had just lost in court, been referred for fraud investigation, and she was still trying to find me. That was when I decided the Bakers needed more than legal defeat, they needed exposure. I opened my laptop and created a folder titled Final Chapter. Inside, I compiled everything: the security footage, the court documents, Leah's forged reimbursements, and even screenshots from Valentina's deleted social media posts where she'd bragged about getting away with everything. Sarah Chen reviewed it that night. "Jonathan, this is airtight," she said over the phone. "If you wanted, we could hand this straight to the press." "I don't want a scandal," I said. "I want truth. And I want it where it can't be buried." So we took a quieter route. Sarah submitted the entire folder to the County Fraud Division, while I sent an anonymous tip, complete with evidence links to several local journalists. I didn't attach my name, but Maplewood wasn't that big. It didn't take long for people to connect the dots. 3 days later, it happened. At exactly 6:02 p.m., Channel 8 Action News aired a teaser. Tonight's headline: Local HOA President under investigation for benefit fraud and misuse of community funds. The thumbnail, Leah Baker, standing proudly in front of the Maplewood sign, the same image she'd used for the HOA newsletter. The report was devastating. It detailed how Leah had filed multiple reimbursement claims for community improvement projects that didn't exist, while simultaneously receiving disability payments under false pretenses. They even showed excerpts from the small claims verdict against her and Valentina. And the cherry on top, the anchor ended the segment with, "Sources indicate the investigation began after a viral video involving Mrs. Baker's daughter and a destroyed iPhone 17. By the next morning, Maplewood Meadows was buzzing. Neighbors gathered in small clusters, whispering like school kids. Someone even left a copy of the newspaper on Leah's porch with the headline circled in red. I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. That afternoon, Leah tried damage control. She sent a mass HOA email claiming the report was fake news and that she was the victim of a targeted smear campaign. It was desperate and unconvincing. Within hours, the email leaked online. Commenters tore it apart line by line. Meanwhile, Valentina decided to reclaim her social media fame. She went live on Instagram sobbing dramatically in front of her ring light. "I'm being harassed," she cried. "Everyone's making fun of me for one little mistake." But halfway through the stream, someone commented, "You smashed a $2,000 phone for $5. The comment section erupted. Thousands of viewers piled in mocking her meltdown. Hashtags began trending number $5 felony, number hoakaren, and my personal favorite number ISmash17. Within hours, the video was reposted everywhere. Reddit, TikTok, even a reaction video from a lawyer explaining her charges. Her influencer career was done. While all this unfolded online, real-world consequences hit Leah hard. The county fraud office launched a full-scale investigation. Inspectors visited the HOA office, seizing files and computers. One of the board members later told me off the record that they found a mountain of irregularities. By Thursday, the HOA held an emergency meeting. I didn't even need to attend. The outcome was predictable. Leah Baker was suspended indefinitely pending investigation. Her access to funds was frozen. Her voting rights revoked. The very rules she had used to control everyone now stripped her of power. Valentina didn't take it well. Around midnight, my security cameras caught her pacing outside her house, phone in hand, ranting to someone. At one point, she looked directly toward my property and shouted, "He ruined my life, maybe." But she'd done most of that herself. The next morning, she tried to make amends, or at least pretend to. A knock echoed on my front door. When I opened it, she stood there, makeup smudged, holding a crumpled envelope. "I just want this to stop," she said softly. I took the envelope. Inside was a handwritten note. "I'm sorry. For the phone. For everything. Please tell them to leave my mom alone." Her voice cracked. For the first time, she didn't sound entitled, just tired. "Valentina," I said quietly, "I didn't ruin your mom's life." "She did. And maybe this is her chance to fix it." She stared at me for a long moment, then turned and walked away. 2 days later, she deleted all her accounts. Leah's unraveling continued in slow motion. As the fraud case widened, more neighbors came forward, people she'd fined, bullied, or manipulated. One revealed Leah had secretly approved construction on her own shed without permits. Another claimed Leah used HOA funds to pay for her private landscaper. The local newspaper ran a follow-up piece titled, "Maplewood's HOA Empire Crumbles." I didn't celebrate. I just watched quietly as everything she'd built on fear and arrogance collapsed under the weight of her own lies. By the end of the month, I received a letter from the county clerk, Leah Baker, officially resigned from the HOA presidency. The letter included a note from the new acting president, Tom Richards, thanking me for upholding community integrity. The neighborhood changed overnight. People started chatting again, hosting barbecues, repainting fences without fear of fines. For the first time, Maplewood Meadows actually felt like a community, not a kingdom ruled by a tyrant. And Leah, she disappeared from public view. The last time I saw her, she was loading boxes into her SUV, her face pale and expression blank. Valentina stood beside her hood, pulled up, avoiding eye contact with everyone. They drove off without saying goodbye. I thought that was the end, until a week later, when a certified letter arrived at my doorstep. It was from Valentina. Inside was a single page. "Mr. Collins, I've started a payment plan for the damages. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted to make things right. Thank you for holding us accountable. No theatrics, no excuses, just accountability, the one thing her mother never taught her." I sat on my porch for a long time after reading it, the evening sun glowing orange over the quiet street. For the first time in years, the silence wasn't heavy, it was peaceful. Sometimes justice doesn't come with sirens or applause. Sometimes it arrives quietly in a letter written by someone who finally learned the value of truth. And sometimes the best revenge isn't winning, it's watching the people who hurt you finally face themselves. Maplewood Meadows was calm again. No more fake citations, no more HOA spies, no more barking orders over property values. Just neighbors, just life. But the next time someone offers me $5 for something priceless, I'll smile and make sure the cameras are rolling. It had been 3 quiet months since the Baker's SUV disappeared down Maplewood Drive for the last time. The neighborhood that once felt like a war zone was now peaceful again, eerily peaceful like the world after a long storm. The lawns were greener, the mailboxes straighter, and the HOA newsletters no longer came laced with threats disguised as friendly reminders. For the first time in years, I could walk outside with a cup of coffee and not feel someone staring at me through blinds. The air smelled cleaner. Freedom had its own scent, apparently. Every now and then, someone would stop me on the street just to talk. "Jonathan, they'd say you really turned things around for this place." I'd shrug, trying not to smile too hard. I hadn't set out to become some suburban folk hero. I just wanted peace. But peace has a funny way of spreading once people stop being afraid. The new HOA president, Tom Richards, was the kind of man you could actually trust. He knocked on my door one morning with a clipboard and a grin. "We voted last night," he said. Leah's official resignation was accepted, and the board unanimously approved a reform plan. Reform, I asked? Yeah. No more random fines, no more secret votes, full transparency. He pointed at his clipboard. "We're calling it the Community Integrity Charter. You inspired it." I didn't know whether to laugh or feel flattered. "Tom, I wasn't trying to start a movement," he chuckled. "That's the best part you did anyway." We stood there for a moment, neighbors again, not enemies. For once, I saw what Maplewood Meadows could have been all along, a neighborhood of decent people just trying to live without fear of citations for their mailbox paint. Still, despite the calm, I hadn't forgotten. I couldn't. Every time I walked past the Baker's old house, I remembered the shouting, the smirks, the arrogance. I remembered my shattered iPhone, the spray-painted insults, the courtroom chaos. But mostly I remembered the silence after the gavel fell when their power finally broke. One afternoon, as I was mowing my lawn, a moving truck pulled up to their old house. A young couple stepped out, smiling nervously, boxes in hand. I turned off the mower and waved. "Welcome to Maplewood Meadows," I called. The husband laughed. "Thanks, we heard it's an interesting place." I grinned. It was. "But don't worry, it's under new management." As they unpacked, I noticed something strange on the doorstep, a small padded envelope addressed to me. No return address, just neat handwriting. My stomach tightened for a second. Leah had used stationery like this once, floral pattern, overly elegant. Inside was a folded note and a money order for $500. The note read, "Mr. Collins, I know I can't undo what I did, but I'm trying to pay back what I owe. I've been working part-time and taking classes. Mom's living with my aunt now. She's not well, but maybe that's what she needs to finally slow down. Thank you for showing me what accountability looks like. Valentina." I sat on my porch holding that note for a long time. The sun dipped low, casting long orange shadows across the street. I thought about how far everything had come from one stupid $5 offer to this moment of quiet closure. In the end, I didn't cash the money order. Instead, I framed the note and tucked it in my office drawer beside the old fragments of the shattered iPhone 17. A reminder that sometimes consequences can lead to change, not revenge, not hatred, but growth. A week later, the HOA hosted its first community BBQ and meetup. The same front lawn where Leah once held mandatory decorum inspections was now filled with picnic tables, laughter, and kids running through sprinklers. People actually smiled at each other. Someone even played a guitar. Tom handed me a paper plate stacked with ribs and corn on the cob. "You see this," he said, motioning around. "This is what it's supposed to be like." I nodded, chewing thoughtfully. "Yeah, we forgot that for a while." He chuckled. "You know, if you ever get bored of tech consulting, we could use someone like you on the board." I laughed. "No thanks, Tom. I've had enough HOA drama for a lifetime." Later that night, as the stars came out, I walked the street alone. The baker's house sat dark and empty, a for sale sign swinging gently in the breeze. For a fleeting second, I almost missed the chaos. It had given the neighborhood a strange kind of unity. But then I remembered what peace sounded like, the hum of crickets, the murmur of sprinklers, no shouting, no fines, no fake smiles. I stopped under the streetlight and looked up. The sky was clearer than I'd ever seen it. Maybe because for the first time I wasn't carrying anger, just understanding. It struck me, then life has a way of balancing things out. Maybe not immediately, maybe not how you expect, but eventually truth always finds its way to the surface. And sometimes the best thing you can do isn't to fight harder, it's to stand still and let justice work. When I got home, I poured myself a small glass of bourbon, sat on the porch, and opened the camera app on my new phone, a titanium iPhone 17 Ultra, stronger than the last one. I recorded a short clip of the quiet street and uploaded it with the caption, "Peace restored. Always document, always stay calm, and let karma do her job." Within hours, the clip got hundreds of comments. People shared their own HOA nightmares, their own little wars with entitled neighbors. I read through them all smiling. We weren't alone. Maybe that was the real victory, not the lawsuit, not the restitution, but the community it built. Sometimes, one act of defiance, a man saying no to unfairness, can ripple out further than you ever expect. Before heading inside, I turned back one last time. The streetlight flickered, catching the edge of the old for sale sign. Beneath it, someone had scrawled a message in faint chalk, "Respect is earned." I didn't know who wrote it. Maybe one of the kids. Maybe a quiet neighbor who'd watched it all unfold. Either way, it felt like the closing line of a story that had finally found its balance. I took a deep breath, pocketed my phone, and whispered to the night, "Sometimes the best revenge is just living better." And for the first time in years, that wasn't a line from one of my late-night rants, it was the truth. No matter how small the injustice, never let arrogance or fear silence you. Document everything. Stand firm. But most of all, stay calm, because time and truth are the greatest equalizers. What goes around always comes back around sometimes, in ways more poetic than any revenge could deliver. If you've ever dealt with your own HOA horror story, or a neighbor who pushed you too far, tell me in the comments below. Let's hear your side, your lesson, your victory. And if you enjoyed this story, hit that subscribe button, because there are more tales of karma, community, and comeback waiting right around the corner. Because in the end, no matter how loud the Karens shout, the truth always wins.